there's this kind of viscerous culture of, oh, if I screw up, I'm going to get blamed and I'm going to get bad. And those are the ones that have trouble actually growing because people are less willing to even take a risk. Because if they take a risk and it doesn't go well, they're gone. And or if I raise my voice and I say something that's contradictory to, the person above me, then I'm going to get cut down, right? And those are the ones that have challenge growing. Like allowing for fruitful conversation that may not all be saying the same thing is important because that's how the best ideas come in.
Welcome back to another installment of the Perspective Podcast. My name's Devin. I have my co-host with me, Mitch Harley, and today we have on the show Alok Gupta from Loki Group. He specializes in business development, business growth, and exit strategy. If I got that right, I'm gonna hand the mic back over to you here in a second, Alok. I just want to kind of kick the conversation forward. First, let's get a little bit of background on who you are and I guess why you're qualified to talk about business strategy and exit and all that.
Yeah, and Devin, Mitch, thanks for having me on the show. Really excited about this conversation we're about to have. So about myself, 23, 24 years of business professional experience. I spent the first few years in manufacturing, doing, operations, supply chain, distribution, warehousing, et cetera. But then, spent now 20 years in advisory consulting roles, where I was doing corporate strategy, mergers, acquisitions, bankruptcy emergence, carve-outs, transformations. I worked overseas for 5 years during cross-border deals and international transactions. I was a lead in the largest pan-country telecom launch in India, which is Jio. I was working with Mukesh Ambani and his executive leadership team to help ensure that was launching on time and appropriately. I came back to the States and I was one of the leaders on the eBay PayPal separation. I was working with John Donahoe, the CEO at the time, and his executive leadership team, including Helen Consteady, who's his chief of staff back then. I gained 60 pounds on the first 2 months of the eBay PayPal project. It was a great project. I loved what I was doing. It was just really intense of what we need to get accomplished, and a lot of work to get done. So I was in the office at 7 a.m. I left at midnight. Only thing available was Jack in the Box to eat at that time, and so yes, the pounds came on pretty quickly, but I was like, I love what I do, but I want to do it differently. And I also, through all my experiences, really saw that I appreciated and loved working with small, lower mid-market and mid-market companies because of the ability to really affect change more, right? When you work with the smaller companies and the large enterprise companies, one small difference can really shift the needle and, turn the boat. Where when you're working with a large enterprise company, it is like, steering a cruise ship, as people talked about. And so, now for the last 7 years, I've had my own firm of Loki Group. And what we focus on doing is working with the small to mid-market companies. That's a big range. My clients range from my smallest client is 8 million in revenue. My biggest client is 2 billion in revenue. Ranges from publicly traded companies, private equity owned companies, and family owned businesses. And we help them in being their fractional chief corporate strategy officer. Let us help you figure out that 5 to 10 year vision. How do you want to get there? How quickly you want to get there? And then to gain that, what of that needs to be organic, meaning through normal course of business, and that's generally cost reduction, revenue growth opportunities, operational efficiencies type stuff. And then what of that needs to be inorganic? And inorganic refers to mergers, acquisitions, and carve-outs. What's the strategy of the vision of that growth? What's the best opportunity to really get to where you want to go? One client, we helped them increase their overall EBITDA margins by helping them understand that 2 of their business units were underperforming, single-digit and negative EBITDA margins for 3 years in a row. And that, hey, you could either reinvest in it and try to turn it around, or do you think someone else out there that's a strategic buyer would be able to operate it better? And so they're like, yeah, let's get it ready for market. So we got those businesses ready for market. We sold it, got some dry powder for the business to be able to reinvest in the 2 business units that were doing well. But their EBITDA margins jumped up because they're able to, remove these 2 business units that they were not able to operate effectively. So that's what we do. Help our clients, help our business owners, executives, and the management of the company grow their businesses and coach them along the way That way they can start to, build that muscle and do it on their own.
Can we dive into a second? You talked about how it's not that the businesses with the negative EBITDA, and it's not that those two models, it's not that they were bad companies. It's not that they were bad products or services or whatever those were, but it was just that it wasn't in the lane. It wasn't in the niche of what they were good at, and it was holding them back, and somebody else would make that flourish. And just not letting sentiment, make decisions that cripple your business. Like, is that true? Like, do you find sometimes companies branch out maybe beyond what they should just for the sake of getting bigger?
Yes. Yeah, that happens quite often. People are like, hey, I need to grow. And they're like, okay, I'll grow something that they had interest in, they grow and they'll attach it to the business. It doesn't necessarily mean that the business is better for it, right? And you got to think about, and that's part of the M&A strategy is, well, where are you trying to go? How do you best do that to really flourish so that way you get 1 + 1 = 3 versus 1 + 1 = 1.5, right? And that's what happened here is that this company had grown through acquisitions and they're just kind of operating them all, but there wasn't really gaining value out of it. And then they weren't really putting attention to these two business units that weren't doing well. And so it was that thing, like, do you want to reinvest time into it to help turn it around? Or, hey, the quick answer is there someone else there that could buy it? They see it as a value because they're probably buying it at a discount. Then it would take them to build that on their own. But for us or my client, it's a value because it's cash they have on hand that they can now put to work immediately and leverage to actually reinvest in the businesses that are doing well.
So how do you make that decision? Because on a big corporate worldwide scale, the example that comes to mind is when Mercedes bought Chrysler, they didn't really do anything with it. They bought it more to just have more options, and Chrysler almost ceased to exist because Mercedes just didn't honestly give a crap about it. And then Fiat stepped in under the umbrella and said, hey, let us bring this back to life, resuscitate it. And I think that, like, Balmer and Mercedes is big enough to say we can just let Chrysler float and we can put it on the shelf for 50 years and not really matter. But at what point do you say, yes, it's worth reinvesting, yes, it's worth maybe bringing in different management to grow this, or is it just time to get it ready for market and kind of move it off our plate? Like, where, as far as you're concerned with those guys, like, where was that decision to say, hey, let's get it ready for market, or hey, let's use this to just do better?
Yeah. So the quick, if I may, Mitch, I'll take a quick back step on the story is, so this company was doing $700 million in revenue. They were private equity backed, and they were bringing in a new CEO and a new COO. They had just got acquired by the PE firm. And so when we came in, we first did a 2-week deep dive into the business and understand the business units, their plants, their facilities, the product line, the profitability. And then we did a half-day workshop with the C-suite. So we had the new CEO, the new COO, legacy CFO, head of HR, head of IT, head of sales. And basically this workshop ended up becoming like, it was 2 different main purposes. One was to onboard the new CEO and COO to the business, understand, hey, what all do you have underneath your realm now? But then 2, it was to dive in and become the strategic discussion of, where do you see this business going and how do you want this business to grow in the next 5 to 10 years? And, with this, we had done a footprint analysis of their production and what products were each of the facilities, how that would change if they were to, turn certain products off or certain business units off, and what that would mean. Head of sales was key to some of this discussion because he understood what was selling across the board on all 4 business units. He knew what was going, what was happening, what his team was able to do well at, and what his team was not able to do well at, and where those customers were. And with that, it was also a cost-benefit analysis that we had done, where we had set this up, like, how much would it take to turn this business around? How much do you need to put in investing in hiring new people? How much do you need to put in to train your employees to doing more better? How much do you need to put in to getting some operational efficiencies out of these facilities or products that are being created? And then what are the benefits of it? And then comparing that with, if we invest that money in now, how much time is it going to take? Because just because you put the dollar in now, you're not going to recoup $1.50 tomorrow. It's probably going to take you a year and a half to get that money back. Because people training and product improvements and sales channels, that whole sales funnel takes time to grow that. And it takes a while to get the money back. Or, hey, if you put it out to market and you sell it, the cost of putting it to market is little because we got to put some time in getting it ready. But it's not as much time or money as investing in it. And then how long do we think it's going to take to sell and get that money out? And so, this business unit, they were able to sell it between $30 and $40 million. And so, but the investment into it was to get ready for market was $200,000. So, hey, we can, in a year, we can be positive $29 million. I'm just rounding off my numbers. Or in a year, we are negative, $3 million because that's the investment we got to put into it. What do we want to do? And do we think the long-term goals of that turning around is worth it? For this client, it was worth getting it ready for market and recouping that cash now to put into the businesses that they knew that they were able to really grow and develop.
When would you recommend buying? I've seen a lot of let's just call $1 million companies that, buy because they want to open up another division. And I'm not saying that's a bad idea. I'm not saying it's a good idea, but right now in the past 6 months, I've seen 2 world scale purchases that are in my wheelhouse that really caught me off guard because I still don't understand the reason that they bought it. I'm sure it makes sense to some board of directors, but for me, as far as boots on the ground, I just didn't see it. Whereas I've seen these little guys buy something that seemed off, and I'm like, it seems to be working really well for them. It made sense to buy another little company. For you, when you advise, when is it a smart thing to buy another smaller company or bigger company versus just saying, hey, let's just grow where we're at here, be internal?
It all depends on what the goal is. So how quickly they want to grow, how quickly they're trying to get into certain areas. Like when you acquire, you got to be trying to gain something, right? And my general recommendation is either trying to gain additional product capacity, like, hey, I want to expand my product line, or I want to be able to reach new regions, or I want to be able to hit a new sales channel or market channel that I haven't been able to hit before, right? Like those are kind of 3 general ways to think about it. And if you're not hitting one of those and it's something completely greenfield, like let's say you're making socks and you're saying, hey, I'm making socks right now. It's like, oh, I want to buy this company that makes metal sheets. My question would be why? What are you really trying to achieve? It was just something
We've seen that. We've seen those wild off the cuff, what are you doing? It doesn't even make sense. You're not even in the same industry. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but it just, to me, I don't see the goal from a consumer standpoint.
Agreed. I'd say for something like that, like socks and metal sheets, for example, for that one, it wouldn't be a strategic reason. It's just being a PE firm type situation. I'm just acquiring because I think it's a good business and I think I can grow it as well. And so then in that situation, you just own 2 different companies that are trying to grow separately and independently, in my opinion. If you really want to, again, that's 1 + 1 = 2, in my opinion, right? If you really want 1 + 1 = 3, or even more amazing, 1 + 1 = 6, the way you do that is you got to look at something that's very strategic in nature. So, hey, I'm currently doing socks. My socks are only in the Southeast. I want to acquire, and maybe part of the challenge is distribution. I can't get distribution to the Northeast, or I can't get to the buyers that are in the Northeast for my outlet. So I'm going to buy a company that has sales in the Northeast for socks. Or I'm going to buy someone who makes undergarments, underwear, and undershirts that has sales in the Northeast. Because I get two birds, one stone. There, I'm expanding my product portfolio, but I'm also getting new sales channels and new customers. Now what I can do is I can get socks to those customers that are in the Northeast, but now I can also bring underwear and undershirts to the Southeast where I currently exist. And that's how we think about it, help them look at it. And part of this is, we have a deep data analytics capability team where when we look at your industry, we'll break it down into components and see what are all the different components into it. And, one example I like to use is cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is one of those industries that, most people, when we think about it, it's like, oh, it's one thing, it's cybersecurity. And I had the team do a deep dive into it, and it broke down into 10 segments, and each segment had 10 to 15, 20 components to it. So cybersecurity is a collection of over 200 components, and you could be in any one or multiple of those fields. Same thing can be for socks, or same thing can be for undergarments. And you got to think about what that category is and how do you want to break it down, and then think about, well, where do you want to go and where's the growth happening? And part of what our deep data analytic capability can do is it'll break it down, and then it will also make a heat map out of it of what is the maturity of each of those components within the industry. Is it embryonic and it's something that's new and growing, and that might be a place to invest or expand into, and you might be able to get a value because things are still fairly new? Or is it really mature and been established, and you can go out there, but the companies you're going to go and find are probably going to be a little more expensive because they've been around for some time and they've got probably a good bit of revenue at this point in time.
So help me out here, because there's a little bit of a knowledge gap for me in terms of when you're talking about business units and different departments. Like, are you talking about like a business holding company and then several businesses that are under that holding company, and then that holding company now is strategically buying and selling businesses to maximize the function or connection of all of these different businesses? Is that what you're...
So it can mean, it depends on the situation, right? So the way I was using it when I was talking about business unit, it was a company that had set up 4 separate product lines, and each product line was a business unit. So it had its own kind of P&L, had its own general manager, its own finance team, and then there was still there was an overarching CEO across the overall business, and there was an overall finance team, right? But each product line was its own business unit within this overall company, is how I was using it. Now, there are some places that they'll do it as you said, is like, hey, we're like a holding company, and our holding company has 4 different businesses that are individually stood up, and each one has their own CEO as well. And that could be a situation as well. But I was referring to the first one.
Okay, so this is more like Ford, but Ford has like a company that manufactures the doors or manufactures the glass or the electronics or whatever. So each of those are individual companies, but they're all under the purpose of building a car.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. Now I'm back on board. So in terms of developing a company, you have quite a breadth of reach from, like you said, just a few $1 million all the way up to a few $1 billion. I think what I gather is the goal is to take the smaller ones and move them into bigger ones. And so how do you make your selection, I guess, or what draws you into a company that shows promise for that as an opportunity?
Yeah, great question, Devin. On a couple of things. So one is, it's the culture and personalities of the owners or the executive team, first and foremost, right? If they have the drive, if they have the vision and passion to really want to do something and grow it, that's key. If that's not there, nothing else matters, because then you just got to chain out the executive team to really help the growth. The executive team, business ownership, culture is a key piece of being able to be like, yes, we can work together. Because if they say, okay, look, I want you to come and help me, but they think that but they have all the answers already, then you don't need me if you think you have all the answers. The purpose of me coming in is to help you think through things and to break the mold and to help think of other opportunities. Now, and it's a partnership the way I think about it, right? Is when I go and work with a client, that client, they know their industry extremely deeply and extremely well, right? I'm not going to claim to be an expert in their industry. What I'm claiming that, and I can help, is let's think through this. I can help break the issue down into categories, into pieces, and really figure out where is the opportunity to go, and bring an outside perspective, honestly, to the place, because that's what really makes a difference. Like a lot of times people in certain industries are like, no, this is the way it's happening because this is the way it's always been done. And we really need to question those sacred cows and see, well, hey, Just because it's been done that way doesn't mean it's the only way to be done. Let's think of other things and other ways that it can be changed. And that's what we try to do, is think outside the box, come together as a partnership with our clients where they have the expertise and then we have outside knowledge to come together and create a new business out of it.
So when you do partner up with somebody and take on that role, where's the first thing that you start with?
First thing is deep dive conversations with the executive team and the key stakeholders. Really understanding from them, what is the business doing? What do they do well? What do they not do well? Where could they be? How could they be doing things better? What are the key challenges that they're facing, and where do they think the opportunities are? And by doing those individual deep dive conversations, you get a lot of different perspectives. You then can figure out where are the overlaps, where our visions align, where our visions different. Because a key set then is bringing everyone together to then do that kind of strategy conversation. Let's talk about where you all align. Let's talk about where you all diverge and have different perspectives. Where do you want this business to go? Because if you want it to grow, everyone's got to be aligned on a single goalpost. If you were, playing football or soccer and you had 10 different goalposts and the teams could choose any goalpost, your team's not going to make a goal because everyone's going a different direction, right? The idea is let's set a goalpost in place that we're all going to align to and all going to work together with. And then now, once we have that goalpost and we understand that vision, then let's break it down to the plays that are going to get us there. And that's where the organic and inorganic projects come in, because they all give a different value of getting to that play, getting to that goal.
I like that. I went in and I did business coaching for a company, and that was one of my hurdles, was going in there and being told that you don't know what you're doing because you don't know this industry. And my argument, it was a bit of a heated debate, but my argument was, I don't know this industry, but you obviously don't know business. So how do we work together on this? Because you're failing and I'm not. And, to me, that concept that, yes, every industry has its own personality. It has its own works and, things you have to work with. But the business fundamentals is not industry related. Business fundamentals is the money game. It's the culture game, like you said. And I think that that's really important to recognize, that if your business is in a spot where maybe you need some help or you need some guidance, you don't need someone from the industry. Look at the CEOs on major corporations that go from Coke to Value Village. There's been things like that. And it's like, he doesn't even know that world, but guess what? He knows business. He knows how to run a company. And I think that's a really valuable point. Like, don't get too caught up in your industry. And just because you're good, I came from the roofing industry. So roofing was, there's roofers with a business and there's business people with a roofing company, and they run completely differently. Yeah. And I think it's really important to recognize, are you a business guy that is owning a roofing company, or are you a guy that's just been doing it for 50 years and wants to work for themselves? And have that as expectations, because that lack of self-awareness can cripple a business.
Yep. Interesting you say roofing. Roofing is one of those areas that PE firms are gobbling up right now and doing roll-ups to create larger and larger roofing.
Why am I not living in a mansion right now? Like, connect me with some of these guys.
Yeah, so it sounds like the thing that you really bring to the table is your skills when it comes to people and collaboration, because that's at the heart of every business, right? Is a group of people trying to solve a problem for a different group of people. And the difficulty is the more people come together, the more you have these opposing ideas, and everyone has their own vision and they try to bring it to life. What do you do to navigate that and help get people on board with an idea? Because I'm sure that's not an easy thing to do.
Those diverging ideas are amazing. And we actually encourage that. Like, I want as many ideas when we're doing these workshops. We want as many ideas to come out on the table so we can discuss them, because it's through all these varying ideas that the best one comes out, right? And usually it's not the idea, like someone had the idea written out and this is it and that's what stuck. It's usually the quote unquote winning idea is one that came from picking and molding through multiple options and bringing it together. And that's why, like, when you get into these conversations, one of the key rules is do not hesitate to bring up a question or a comment or an issue. no one is going to, look down or be rude in return as well. So treat everyone, be respectful in nature. Everyone's got to be able to share what they have on their mind and ask any question that they have, because if you have a question in your mind, I'm sure someone else in the room also has the same question. And it's about this collaboration, this open discussion that is key. And what I've seen from the better performing businesses from those that have more trouble is those that are better performing businesses encourage and have active dialogue and disagreement. And the disagreement is on the topic, not with each other. And the people know that it's not me, it's not you, it's about this topic. Let's talk about the topic, and this topic is what we're debating. And it's okay if we get intense about this topic, but we can't, but there's no name calling, there's no saying you messed up. It's not about that, it's about the issue at hand. The ones that have trouble are the ones where there's this kind of viscerous culture of, oh, if I screw up, I'm going to get blamed and I'm going to get bad. And those are the ones that have trouble actually growing, because people are less willing to even take a risk. Because if they take a risk and it doesn't go well, they're gone, right? And if I raise my voice and I say something that's contradictory to, the person above me, then I'm going to get cut down, right? And those are the ones that have challenge growing. Like allowing for fruitful conversation that may not all be saying the same thing is important, because that's how the best ideas come out.
As you were speaking, you reminded me of this matrix that I heard about that the Marines use. I can't remember who was talking about this. It might have been, I'm sorry, Mitch, I keep bringing this up, but it might have been Simon Sinek. On one side, if you imagine there's 4 quadrants on one side.
Trust and
trust and skill.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
so
yep.
However you slice it up. So on one side there's trust, and the other side there's skill. If you have a high trust, low skill person, it's still more desirable than having a high skilled, low trust person, because of what it does to the culture. And so if you enter a space where you find a lot of the leadership is very ego driven, they're, like you said, they're really attached to a specific outcome, and if they don't have that, they feel like it's a failure, or like their job is at risk, or whatever else. There's a lot to undo in a culture like that. Is that something that you take on, or do you avoid that and look for companies that already have that in place?
If they're open to the coaching, we're happy and willing to help coach them, right? And that's the key thing. Like, they have to be self-aware that, yes, I know that this is how I am. Yes, I want to change. And we then will be happy to help them change.
Right. So when you get into conversations like that, I'm sure you have some battle stories of going head to head with some of these guys, and they're pretty powerful people. I'm sure, running companies that are in the millions and hundreds of millions. So are there any war stories that stand out?
One. And honestly, this is one of the first ones that I viewed, and I thought that it was great. So I won't say it's a war story, but it was what I saw, and I was like, oh, wow, okay. It was really eye-opening to me, where it was a $1 billion company, publicly traded, and I was helping them with their strategic vision, their 5-year, 10-year plan. And in the meeting, the CEO was asking a question, well, why is this number different on this page than 5 pages down? So one, I was really impressed by the CEO, like, picking out these numbers on, this was a 200-page deck that was being put together, and he picked out that these 2 numbers were different. And he's like, well, which one is it? And they're like, I think it's this one. I was like, well, do you think, or do you know? Like, what are we trying to achieve here? What are we trying to do? And it was one of the really first times I saw intense debate about what the right answers and why, and that it was accepted. And after the debate was done, and it got kind of heated, it got loud, but after the debate was done, everyone was like, okay, next thing. And everything was normal again. And it really impressed me. It put an impression on me. I was like, oh, wow, okay. And I saw how it made a better product at the end of the day. And it was really eye-opening and just dawning on, that's what makes a good business. It's not just saying, oh, yes, I'm going to say yes to whatever the CEO says, because that doesn't make a good business all the time, right? And and someone saying no to the CEO and saying, I don't think that's correct. I mean, that was part of the discussion, the debate. Is like, well, tell me why this isn't correct. Didn't this happen a year ago and we messed it up? And what do we do to make it right? And again, very intense conversation. It got heated, but it wasn't directed at each other. It was directed at the actions that were taken and the issue that was being had and how they want to make sure that the issues didn't continue going forward. And next moment, everyone's good with each other. On to the next page.
So it reminds me of like a blacksmith, right? When you have multiple guys hammering out a piece of metal and it's loud and it's messy and it's hot and it's gross and it's ugly, but then because everyone puts so much effort into it, they put it in the water and out comes this beautiful sword. Like, I think it's kind of in that tried by fire and forged in steel kind of thing, that mentality where it's okay to get down and dirty and it's okay to get loud as long as it's done with the intention of progress, not malice. And I think today, like, culture is so important to me. Me and Devin talk about it a lot in business. Culture has to be healthy, but it doesn't have to be glass, right?
Yeah.
Culture doesn't mean that you have to make sure everyone's feelings are okay. Culture means that it's healthy, productive, and everyone feels good. That doesn't mean that you have to, wear kit gloves all the time. And I think that example is perfect for that. Business can get heated sometimes. When you talk money and people's livelihoods, emotions come roaring out. And so it's about kind of balancing out those emotions and making sure everyone feels respected, because you can have a heated disagreement. You and me right now could have a disagreement on fundamental business ideas. But if we come at it from an idea of respecting for each other, that's going to have progress in the conversation.
Exactly. And that's part of the key of that culture, is making it known that we got to focus on the issues and the actions. And that's what we're debating, and not each other. And it's not calling anyone stupid or silly or ignorant or unknowing. It's no, we're all trying to work towards the same goal. And that's what we're discussing. Right. And I had to do this with one of my own team members. Right. And where I got onto him, I was like, well, I was pushing him a lot of questions, and I could sense that he was feeling down. And I'm like, what's wrong? He's like, well, I feel like I failed you and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, dude, it's not about you, right? Like, my question wasn't against you. It was against the action. I want to make sure that you're spending your time wisely. I want to make sure you're focused on the right things. It wasn't about you. It's not you. I'm not saying anything about you. It's about making sure that the time you're spending is on the right stuff, and that we're making progress on the right things, and that, you may have an idea that I didn't have. Just because I feel strongly about my idea doesn't make it right. But I want you to share me your idea, and we're going to discuss it, and we're going to debate it. And then, at the end of the day, if I make a call, then that's the call, and then we go forward with it. And that's how we will operate, right? But I need you to be willing and open to disagreeing.
There's a common thread in a lot of the conversations that we have with all walks of business people, whether you're a brand new startup or you're in the billions. It requires a radical level of self-awareness and detachment almost from the outcome, right? Like, being that you pour of yourself into whatever this thing is. And so that might be a certain way that you measure yourself, but also it's not about you. It's about the common goal that the entire group of people is working towards. Mm-hmm. And having everybody on board with all that is definitely important too, to keep the ship afloat. Because if you have even one toxic member, there's a couple of studies I read. I don't remember exactly the statistics, but just having one toxic member in a culture can derail an entire company. And so I guess how does your work tie into those interpersonal skills, or do you focus just on data and leveraging that? Like, how do you tie the two together?
Psychology is a huge component in business and everything that we do, especially when it comes to private equity and M&A activity. If I could go back to my younger self and give one piece of advice, one of it would be to take more psychology, like human behavioral psychology classes, in addition to the business stuff I did, because I didn't understand how much that played at that time. And I just how true it is. Like, psychology is huge in how it all works. So it's all part of what we do, and it's all in it, right? Like a lot of the times when we're working with the teams and we're working with each of the individual managers. So when you're doing any project, organic or inorganic projects, there are going to be multiple individuals that need to be involved in that project being successful. And they each have their own area of stuff that they need to do, and they need to get it done. And part of the coaching that we do with them is like when they're saying so-and-so isn't giving me what I need and they're screwing it up, I'm like, hold on, time out. Is it them screwing it up, or are you upset about the action and that you need the information? The information is the issue. Is it the people, or is it the action? And part of it is the coaching of bringing them down, helping them focus on the action versus people, and then calling it to the attention and make sure everyone is singing the same tune. Like we have individual conversations with each of those key leads to get updates from them, but also coach them along the process of what are they trying to do? What's the issue that they're really seeing, and help them figure it out. And it's, you can't do one without the other, right? If you focus on just the data and you work on just the data, you're not going to come up with a fruitful item at the end of the day, or fruitful project at the end of the day. If you focus on just the people and you don't really have a plan or any data in place, then you don't really know if what you did was successful, because there's no way of measuring it at that point in time. And so in going in business, you got to do both. You got to do psychology and you got to do data. It all comes together.
I think we should introduce him to Jay, and he can have Jay in part of his toolbox, because that's right in line with what you're saying. But something else I want to bring up too is within businesses, and I've experienced this on major scales. Sometimes departments they have personalities, right? Your marketing team has a personality, your sales team has a personality, your HR has a personality, and sometimes none of those personalities align. And in order for the business to run smoothly, you have to create bridges. You have to say, hey, these guys aren't talking to each other properly. And the big company that I was with, there was a huge disconnect between operations, sales, and marketing. And so what they ended up doing was pulling myself and a few other of the sales staff onto the marketing team and bringing some operations. And the marketing team basically was created out of all these different departments. And there was such a collaboration, and it changed the interactions between those departments. Is that something that you work with? Is that something you see to say, hey, you guys are just not communicating properly? Like, you don't have a problem with product or production?
Yes. Yes, and where we help put that in place. And I'd say when we're working on the projects, usually we're the bridge doing that. For example, there was a company I was working with, publicly traded. They're doing an international acquisition, and in doing this acquisition, they were manufacturing big industrial products, right? And they were having to move all the equipment from the facility to a new facility, because the current facility was not part of the deal in the acquisition. And so in moving all the equipment and production over, supply chain had stated very broadly to the steering committee and to like the team, hey, we hope to keep consistent production in line for 6 to 12 months after we complete the move. Meaning we won't be able to scale up, but we hope we don't scale down. He's like, most likely we'll have to go slower, but we hope to maintain our current throughput. Okay. That was well known, well stated many times. I remember one week I'm talking to sales and marketing, and they're like, oh, we'll come up with this new program because our product lines are complementary to each other. We want to be able to sell more, and this should increase sales by 30%. I'm like, oh, by what time frame? Like, when are you going to start this? Like, oh, we're going to start it on Monday, and sales will be kicking in next month. I'm like, is supply chain and operations aware of this? Like, no, but they should be able to adjust to it. I'm like, oh, okay, like you got to know how hard you want to push at what and when. And so I was like, okay, let me go talk to supply chain operations. I talked to supply chain operations, and they said the same thing. We just completed the move. We're hoping to stay steady for the next 6 to 12 months. We're good. We're holding there. We're a little bit low right now, but we're holding there. Like, marketing's coming out with a new promotion that they anticipate sales to go by 30%. Could you guys maintain this? Like, no, we can't do this. Why would they do this? I'm like, all right, great. Steering committee meeting. We have a steering committee meeting once a week, and then as we progress, we meet every other week. But steering committee meeting, we brought this up. Like, hey guys, sales, you want to make this promotion? Tell me about it. Like, oh, here's what it's going to do: 30% growth. operations, can you guys sustain that? No, we can't. All right, what do we do? And I was like, do we need to talk about it right now? Or can we take it offline? But creating that bridge, creating that opportunity of like, hey, okay, it's not just Alok said this and told me this offline. This is now shared with the key stakeholders, like key C-suite and board, saying, hey, these won't align up, and why they won't align up, go figure it out. And now they have to go figure it out. So it's not just, he said, she said, but hey, there's no alignment. Executive team says, I want you to go figure out what the answer is and when is the soonest you can make it happen. And then that's what they went to do. So they needed direction, because supply chain would have said, you got to wait 12 months. Sales and marketing says, no, you got to do it tomorrow. Leader said, figure out when's the soonest you can make it happen. And you got to do it jointly together. And then that was a directive that they then had to go work offline to figure it out.
You know what's funny about this whole situation, as you were explaining it, I was thinking about my kid and how he interacts with my family's the other children that are in the family. And sometimes there's this child and this child, and this child wants this thing and this one wants this different thing, and now they have to go head to head, right? And that going head to head creates an environment of competition. And one child's gonna win and one child is gonna lose. And it's because they don't have the skills or ability to even understand or fathom that there is a different paradigm or a different way to function inside of what's going on there. And I find myself as as one of the parents anyways, often playing the role, not of mediator, but of toolbox. Because I don't want to fight the battle for these two people. Then I got to pick a side, and then somebody loses, and we're still in that competitive mind frame. And we're a family, right? And that doesn't work well, being competitive with each other as a family. So as the toolbox, it becomes, okay, here's a way that you guys can think about this situation so that maybe you can reframe your paradigm and operate from a collaborative perspective as opposed to that competitive one. And it's crazy, because when we get older, with this same environment exists when we're in school, when we're in high school, when we're in college, then when we go to work and some of our jobs that we have, and then when we start our own business, we're constantly faced with these different paradigms and frames through which we see the world, and that shapes how we grow things and how we can get through it. And so in that situation that you're sharing, it's like you're not fighting anybody's battles. You're not going up against anybody and taking sides. What you were doing was offering the tools that they need now to find a way to collaborate to achieve an outcome. Because here's what happens. If one doesn't, like marketing, I know, because I'm part of that. If marketing doesn't have like the next cool, awesome idea, you're fired.
Yeah.
Right? And so because you have the same parents or the same boss that you're trying to impress, right? But then, production's like, we can't do it. We don't have it. It's impossible for us to do the thing that you're telling us to do. So now they are at risk of seeming like they're lazy or unwilling or lacking of resources and tools. And so they might lose their job. And there's a lot at stake. So that's crazy just to see that correlation between these two paradigms. Are there other paradigms that you come across in the work that you do that it's just like, if it was just if we could just change the way that you're looking at it? Because you mentioned the other one about how it's not about you as a person. Mm-hmm. It's about the task or the problem or the situation, right? Which is separate from you and me. You and me are going to collaborate together on that. So then that brings in that competitive versus collaborative frame. Are there other frames that you have encountered in the work that you do that might help somebody kind of on the come up and get them in a position so that they can grow their business to hire you?
Yeah, a great question. I mean, I think the key thing, I'll say this for the entrepreneurs that are in your audience, is entrepreneurs, because they've grown something, they've had to wear all the hats. It's usually hard for them to hand that hat over to somebody else and to let go of the reins a little bit. Like, they're so focused on working in the business, they forget about working on the business. And if they really want their business to grow, the best way to do that is they have to let go of the reins more. They have to hire people to come in and take those different responsibilities off their plate to allow them to be the business owner on the business and not constantly having to work in the business. What that also leads to is, how do they grow the businesses? By them being able to do that, one, the business can flourish because you have someone who's solely focused on that one activity, and they can then be able to grow faster, hopefully. And then two, by doing that also, when you are ready to exit or sell your business, if you wanted to, you actually get a lot higher valuation, because now the whole business isn't centered around you, the owner. It's actually an executive team that's running it. So, hey, if you, the owner, leave, it can still operate and run. And especially PE firms. PE firms will pay a premium for a business that has that team in place. And actually, most PE firms I've talked to won't even think about acquiring a business unless there's an executive team that can run the business. And if it's all focused on one person, it's not a business that they're really interested in, because the concern is what happens if that person decides to leave, or God forbid, something worse happens, right? So if you're really looking at really growing your business, you got to be able to step back, hire people in to take over some parts of those roles, and then you be able to focus on the business from a high level perspective. And you don't have to hire everyone in one fell swoop, right? You could be like, okay, hey, I really need someone for marketing. Let me get marketing guy in here and let me focus on everything else. And then as your business grows a little bit, because you're able to get that one thing off, okay, now we got a little more cash. Let's bring in a head of finance to take that piece on, so I can focus on operations and whatever else I'm focusing on. And then just you can build that team organically over time. You don't have to do it all at once, right? And that's the thing I think a lot of people get stuck in, like, no, gotta bring all these people in. I don't have the money for that, or they just don't want to let go of the responsibility. It's their baby and it's hard to let go, but that's the key if you really want this business to grow. It's kind of like sending your kids to school, right? Like, you gotta be able to let go and let that kid go to school if you want them to thrive and be able to grow.
What's your opinion on third party versus in-house? So, an HR department. I personally have very strong opinions on HR department, and that it should be, third party, not internal. But same with marketing. You've got, somebody like with Devin's company is a third party marketing company for other businesses. Some choose to have it in-house. Where's kind of that line in the sand? Why would somebody choose, in your opinion, to keep it in-house, external? Because there's pros and cons for each side, right?
Definitely. And I'd say it depends on what you feel the need is for your company, right? Like, we're fractional chief strategy officer, right? Devin, giving marketing services, I'd say that's fractional marketing offerings that you're able to give to people. There's a whole world of fractional, functional offerings out there. And what it allows you to do, it allows you to get that support without having to put a full year's salary into it for an individual. Where if you wanted a chief marketing officer, you're talking about a 6-figure plus salary for someone. If you're a small business, you may not have that capacity to really give that out there, because you then don't have enough money coming in for yourself. And so having someone come from a fractional perspective and provide some guidance and help on a per piece type of situation might make sense at that point in time. So I would say, like, as you grow, you got to figure out what need you have and the frequency of that need. For finance, if your role is finance if the role is finance and you need someone constantly in the business on the finance role all the time, then you probably need to hire someone full time, right? Maybe you need an accounting person full time in house instead of just a CPA. You need a controller maybe, and that's what you need to drive the business forward. Marketing, I think third party marketing services are amazing. Most small businesses, in my opinion, probably don't need a full time marketing individual. Now sales, you probably need a full time sales, because sales is what you're constantly having to do to get your product out there and bring that revenue in. But I think, definitely marketing, you probably don't need a full-time marketing person. A controller, I think, makes sense if you want full-time. But CPA firms are out there because you don't always need a full-time accounting individual on your team, and use that CPA firm. I definitely think small businesses start off with a fractional use of using these third-party services, and then as you see that you need someone more regularly, then bring it in-house.
I like that strategy.
So we've talked about the kind of vetting process, what it takes to kind of be in the world of like what you like needing somebody like you. We've talked a lot about, okay, how when you get in there, what do you mix up and what's the recipe, to bake the cake. But we haven't yet touched on, okay, now we have the nice cake, what do we do with it? And you mentioned a couple of times the exit strategy and that sort of thing. So if somebody's in that position where like, okay, we've got it, we're ready to go, all this stuff has happened, what are the steps that it takes now to move that thing forward?
Yeah. So if they're doing organic growth, you're putting it in there, you want to make it routine. You want it, so I say all of this is like a working out, right? You gotta, it takes time to go to the gym before you can get to the heavier weight, and then you gotta, so the more you do it, the stronger you get. The way I like to say that what we do, who we are is, I'll give this analogy first and get to your question, Devin, is, as a business owner, you could go to the gym, and I go to the gym, I would, pick up some weights, do some dumbbell curls, I'd do some leg presses. I leave after 2 hours. I was like, you know what? I probably walked around half the time, but I got maybe a little workout in. I don't really sweat. Okay, 2 hours went by. Or I can sign up for a 45-minute workout class with a coach. In that 45 minutes, the coach is telling me, drop down, give me 10 push-ups, jump up, do 10 jumping jacks, come over here, do curls. It allows me to turn my brain off and focus on the activity. And in 45 minutes, I'm leaving, I am sweating, I am exhausted, I'm exhilarated, I feel refreshed. And by doing that, I've gained a lot more value in the 45-minute class, right? We look at ourselves as we're that business fitness coach. Let us help you figure out the business and help you drive it forward so you can focus on the activity and not on having to figure out what the activity is that needs to be done, right? And with that, right, I'd say to get ready for an exit, if you want to get an exit, you need to be thinking 2-3 years in advance. I think too often entrepreneurs are like, okay, I want to sell my business tomorrow. I'm like, well, you don't have the pieces in place to make it worthwhile. You're not going to get the money out of it that you hope to get out of it because of XYZ reasons, right? You don't have a management team in place to run the business after you're gone. You have too much debt on the business. And so when you get an exit of this business, most of your money is going to go to the debt and you're not going to walk away with enough for you to sustain what you're trying to do. Like you got to think about all these different components. And when you think about that exit value and when you think about that exit value, most buyers want to see consistent history for at least 2 to 3 years to say, okay, it's sustainable. They don't just want to see a change in 1 year and give you value for it, because that 1 year might be a fluke and then next year might go back to the old way. So you got to really show a 2-3 year history of growth or of something being in place for it to really gain value and get a multiple on it that you want by a buyer itself. So you got to be thinking 3 to 5 years in advance. 2 to 3 years in advance to really get that value, and then you just got to drive it, right? And so part of that is why I say with M&A, it's the integration activities, because if you're looking to exit in 2 to 3 years, acquiring a business that's strategic in nature to what you do is a great way of quickly growing your revenue and growing your EBITDA, right? Now, a key thing is, again, to make 1 + 1 = 5, is to make sure you focus on synergies and merging those organizations together to get the most out of it. So that way you're not just 1 + 1 = 2, but 1 + 1 = 5. Hey, because I got these 2 product lines now, I can go to my customers, I can sell them 2 different products and I get the revenue there instead of having to have 2 different sales teams and now 1 sales team. I can get 2 sales for the cost of 1. I can really grow my operations and my efficiencies. I can have 1 single finance team and not 2 finance teams. And those other people have been deployed to do other things that add more value. So really creating value from that, because then that adds more value at the end. So it's all about making sure that you think about 2-3 years in advance, and all the actions you do, you drive as much value out of it that you can, and you put the right structure in place so that way the business can be operating without you involved and still get the same results. And all of that leads to getting to getting a good valuation. Now, to finish it off, it's then about, now that you've got a good company in place that could get a great valuation, you got to market it in the best way to get that value. And most people want to go through brokers or bankers, which I think are great. They have their place, they have their audience that they reach out to, and they can get you key buyers to the table that are really interested. That's something that we help with as well. We're not a broker or a banker though, but we have relationships with PE firms that are looking for great businesses that are operating to help them and to basically do a majority buyout and then fund their growth through M&A activity or through additional organic growth activities. And it's about putting the package together and having all your financials ready, all your asset list and equipment list ready, and whatever materials that you have, having all these different components ready. That way, when a buyer says, hey, I'm interested, let's sign an NDA, or here's my LOI, my letter of intent, and I'm ready to buy you and you're ready to share information, you can share that information very quickly. Because one thing more than anything will kill a deal, and that is time. When too much time passes between communications, people and parties lose interest and deals will die, right? And so the more prepared you are with all your materials to share when you're ready to go to market, the higher likelihood you are of getting a deal done. So a quick example there is a client I have right now, and the infrastructure services company signed an LOI. The LOI was for 60 days of due diligence. That's when they're getting in to basically look behind the covers, and they've signed an NDA. So we're giving them unredacted information at this point in time. So before the LOI, everything they got was redacted and very kind of pieces of, here's the information I'm sharing with you because, I want you to be interested. And I'm not going to share with you my employee names or my customer names or other things like that because that's my competitive information, right? But once we have the LOI, then you got to open up the books. And that's when you share all your information very openly with them. But we had it all ready to go. And we're only 30 days into this process, and we've basically shared them everything, and it's done. They're like, this has been one of the fastest due diligences that we've had because we were ready and we were prepared. And what that does for the buy side is like they feel then we are great and the client's great and what they have, and that they then are more willing to pay for it and more willing to pay a higher multiple for it because of the organization of what has been put in place.
There's such a clear path from point A to point B. I was hoping for some gray areas so that I could, drive that forward. But it seems to me like you got a really deep understanding of the whole thing, and being able to move through an acquisition in like as little as a month is kind of staggering when you think about like, well, what was the work on the back end to get you there? Is that what you were, the 2 years, that's what you were up to first, so that 30 days was on point?
So the 2 years, what we did is, and we were advising, like we also didn't have to put a lot of time into it during those 2 years. We were advising the CEO on what he needed to focus on growing. So focusing on different markets, focusing on different types of projects, focusing on how he could better utilize his people. So giving him the ideas, but then he was implementing, he was putting in there, right? If he wanted us to help him implement it, we were happy to do that. But, he was trying to keep his costs low. Not a problem. We are very flexible in how we're willing to work with our clients. And so someone like, yeah, just come and do it for me. All right, we'll come and do it for you. Someone like, all right, tell me and I'll put it in place. Then we'll do that as well. So that was what that was. But then this year is when he wanted to, like, he was like, all right, I'm ready to go. And it took us about 2-3 months to get pieces in place that we needed to get in place to get it ready and to get what we refer to as the if you want to call it the deal brief or the pitch book of the deal, to kind of summarize, here's the deal that you want to look at for our key people that we're sharing with. And we really approach it very differently. Like a lot of people put together what's referred to as a CIM or SIM, Confidential Information Memorandum, which is a big, thick book of all the different parts of the business and all these key pieces and snippets of information. What we did is we put together a pitch book, like a storybook of, hey, here's a presentation about the business, about the different components, very high level. But when you're ready, we were just going to show you the unredacted or the redacted data. And that way you don't have the names of people or customers, but you'll have the data itself and you could do your own analysis. And we were very upfront with it. because we felt that was best for their buyers that we were bringing to the table. We brought key people to the table that were either already in the space or that were looking to create platforms in the space. And they know what they want to look at anyway. And so I was like, listen, I'm not going to waste your time trying to feed you something that you then say, oh, I don't agree with it. I'm just going to give you the raw data. I'll share with you some summaries in it, but I'm going to let you have it so you can figure out your own perspective on if it's right for you or not. And that really worked well with the folks that we work with on the buy side from PE firms that we know.
I think one day I would just like to get you in front of a whiteboard and just like me and a few close friends and just nerd out for a day, because this has been amazing.
I love whiteboarding, and just so when I was working overseas for 5 years, I would carry a pack of dry erase markers in my laptop bag, and I whiteboarded on windows constantly.
That's cool. I'm taking that tip. All I got's a highlighter and a Sharpie in mine, so I'm going to add the dry erase. That's cool. Alok, you've been really generous with your time, and I can't tell you how informative and eye-opening a lot of this was. I'm sure that, this is a little bit above the stages of some of the entrepreneurs that watch, but it also now can help some of the ones that are a little bit further along. So I think that that's super valuable. Before we wrap things up, is there one thing that you'd love everybody to know about, growing and business acquisition that would make a huge world of difference in from your perspective?
I was hoping you were going to ask me that question just now. I'd say the main thing I'd advise anyone that's in a business, starting a business or well established, is you have to have a vision or perspective of what is your goalpost. What is your end goal? Are you looking to grow this to what size you're looking to grow it to? Are you looking to exit at some point in time, or are you looking to pass it on to the next generation, or whatever it may be? What is that goalpost? Make sure you've established that goalpost out there, because that is what you need to look at as you make decisions throughout your process. And that is a key piece of it. I think too often people get into business and they just start doing, but they don't have a goal of, are they trying to be a $10 million company or a $50 million company or a $1 billion company? They don't know. They were just going through the motions. And that goalpost, I think, is helpful in driving their direction.
Super clear, man. That's probably some of the more sound advice that we've gotten. You're the one who gets to set the bar, and make sure you set the bar at a place that is very, very clear. And then that will arm you with what you need to move the ship forward. So that's pretty cool. If somebody wanted to reach out to you and maybe take on your services or just pick your brain, is there a way for people to get in touch with you?
Yeah, so our website is loki.group, so loki.group. My email address is, you guys can email me from there, or my email is my first name, Alok, ALOK, .Gupta, GUPTA, at lokiequity.com. So LOKIEQUITY.com.
Beautiful. We'll try to link as much as we can of that into the show notes so that anybody that's watching or listening can just click over and get in touch with you. Other than that, I think this has been a wonderful and a very in-depth conversation. So thank you very much for sharing your insights.
Yeah. Devin, Mitch, thank you for having me on your podcast. Really appreciate the time and really appreciate the conversation.
Awesome. That's it for this episode, and we will see you in the next one.